If you look back previous to the pandemic, we saw a lot more cash on our cards than electronic payments, and that has shifted. But there have been shifts during the pandemics. One, certainly away from things you couldn't get when you were in lockdown, right? Or certain segments were closed. So travel, restaurants, experiences, a lot more purchasing of physical goods, and that has now shifted more broadly back to more pre-COVID consumption levels. If you ask about the question around just consumer spend from a macro perspective, we've seen, we would have expected to see, I'll start with this, at the end of 2022 with higher inflation, interest rate hikes, we would have expected to see in a more traditional sense that would have started to suppress consumer demand and spending and investment and employment and then slow down the economy. We haven't seen that. In 2023 and in 2024, consumer spending has been resilient pretty much across the globe, and I can talk about some of the differences, but it's been really resilient, and it's been on the back of kind of robust employment still in most of the major economies around the globe. We have, as I mentioned, have seen some of the shift to different types of goods. For example, in the GCC, which has been huge growth. And it's hard to, when everything's growing fast, it looks great, but we've seen even a shift in the difference in growth rates. So if you look at food delivery and groceries, it's one of the highest growth rates we've seen over the last 4 years, it's about 30%. Transport, restaurants, lodging, travel, all in the kind of mid to high 20% CAGR growth rates. And then what's been slower, yet still very good growth, has been apparel, consumer goods, kind of the physical things, which I think people had bought a lot of that in the past, and now consumer demand has shifted. That's in the GCC. More broadly, in other parts of the region, where inflation has been higher and there hasn't been as much necessarily economic growth and consumers aren't doing as well, they've had to prioritize. And they've had to prioritize around the essentials. So they've had to be able to spend to put food on the table, higher energy prices, and they're trading down. So sometimes maybe not buying the top brands, but buying other brands. So we've seen that shift happening as well. If you look back 4 years ago, I talked about this great shift to digitization, which is still happening. We now have across our region, so Central Europe, Middle East, and Africa, 350 million cards or credentials and 11 million sellers on our network. If you rewind about 4 years ago, the number of credentials or consumers that have a Visa card has almost doubled, and the number of sellers has tripled. So we're bringing lots more people into the financial system. And that gets to your question about how is that happening? It's happening digitally. So we're seeing our own financial institution partners start to go digital. You've seen digital banks. We're seeing fintechs coming in on the consumer side and really helping making it easy and seamless for consumers to onboard. So there's a great consumer experience, which is end-to-end digital, especially if you think about Gen Z. Just like you want to be able to download WhatsApp and start sending messages immediately, consumers want the same experience when they're opening an account. And largely, this younger demographic and cohort wants to be able to have a payment account or have a savings or a banking account to be able to make purchases. Commerce is really important, so they want that to be just as easy. A few clicks and instantly you're able to start shopping or spending. On the merchant side, we've seen the same thing. Really new players coming in and helping these small, micro, nano merchants, which certainly need help, but they really benefit from digital processes. So you've got more players in the ecosystem helping them be able to digitize their face-to-face using new technologies like tap-to-phone to be able to take a small, simple smartphone and turning it into a point-of-sale device, to also helping them with e-commerce as well. So we're seeing those trends to bring more consumers, more sellers into the ecosystem.